SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae has put hundreds of millions back into the hands of Mississippi's citizens, expanding the state's affordable college and career savings program and also returning record amounts of unclaimed money. Check out how Treasurer David McRae's office can help you, your business, or your organization. Treasury.ms.gov.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday Eve. Woo-hoo, we have made it to the Friday Eve point of the week. And what a week it has been. It's been a busy week up in Columbus yesterday. Thoroughly enjoyed that. What a beautiful setting. Wasn't that neat? Sitting there at the marina, 2 floors up. And I got to tell you, my son is a big fisherman, recreational fisherman, of course, like many are in the state. I used to, don't as much anymore. These are some serious folks that do that, aren't they? And they know what they're doing. It is incredible to see those rigs. And the wrapped trucks that they use to carry those boats around, and then the wrapped boats, of course. They're just sort of floating advertisements. It's pretty cool. And it's quite the honor to host that event in Columbus here in the state of Mississippi. Big deal. So enjoyed that. And I'm telling you, Rhino, that parking lot area around the marina where we were was buzzing with people setting all that stuff up. It's a big production. Really is. Pretty cool. We're all buckled up, ready to go. You know who else is? The legislature. They're down there, I think, out of anticipation of it being a long day, being the deadline day, of course. We're in the dead. We're like in the fourth dead, maybe.
Yeah, third or fourth.
Third or fourth dead in the sequence. That will be going on today down there at the Mississippi State Capitol, the legislature. I enjoyed a social dinner last evening with a few of those members of the House, and they were, of course, telling me they expected it to be a protracted day. Gabbled in today at 9 or 10, I think, at our time, or maybe even a little earlier. A little unusual, but not at this point in the session. And, of course, those bills that advance...
Yeah, they just gabbled in.
At 10, right?
Yeah, House and Senate.
Gotcha. So today they will try to push bills, well, those that they want to, into conference. And that's where leadership will then name conferees. And they'll get together in a conference-type setting, literally, and they'll try to iron out any differences they had because that's how they end up in conference. The bill gets out of the Senate or the House, gets transmitted in accordance with the Rhino-prescribed procession down the hall, maybe going from Senate to House, House to Senate. And then at that point, they can either, the opposite chamber can say, okay, yeah, this looks cool, we'll sign off on it, boom, send it to the governor. Or they may say, nope, we don't like that, and it dies in committee with little to no fanfare, such as HB 2, the Speaker of the House's priority early in the session, which was promptly file 13 by Senator Dennis DeBar down there in the state Senate. You I think, counted the actual amount of time it took. 84 seconds, right? I think is the number. I'll never forget that, by the way. That number's like etched in my brain forever. 84 seconds it took the senator to dispose of what was the speaker's top priority. That's the way it works. Now, I got to tell you, I'm actually an advocate for changing the rules such that a committee chairman wouldn't possess such extraordinary power. Some people may disagree with that. I just don't think that a committee chairman should be able to say, I don't like that one. I don't mean just bills that come from the opposite chamber. I mean bills that are assigned inside their chamber from whomever the presiding officer is, the lieutenant governor, of course, in the Senate, the speaker in the House.
The only problem with that is the system is already slower than the sound of smell.
That is true. That may delay
add
it.
An extra layer, you're just adding another way for incompetency, idiocy, or ego to gum up the works.
You're correct, and I'll add to that. You know why that is? Because we file too many damn bills. That's the fundamental problem, right?
And a vast majority of the elected officials under the dome don't fear for their seat.
Totally true. That's absolutely true.
So they don't feel the need to actually deliver on anything.
Now, there are some members, I think you would agree with me here, who by simply affixing their name to a measure pretty much dooms it. Even within their own chamber, right? I'm not exaggerating here whatsoever.
Because if you think back to however cliquey your high school was, under the dome's 3 times worse.
100%. It's absolutely true. So that happens as well, as you well know. But the point is that today the options are concur with legislation that made it out of one chamber, made it through the committees in the other chamber. That deadline is passed, and then it goes to the floor, and that's where it sits, and it's waiting for concurrence. That literally is the status, if that is the particular status. A prime example is the big pharmacy benefit manager reform bill that passed the House. We've talked about that extensively here on the program. I would argue it may be the highest profile legislation that everybody's on the edge of their seats about, certainly in the Capitol. Maybe not across the great state of Mississippi. I think people are worried about taking care of their families and earning a living and paying their bills and dealing with the high price of gas and everything else. That's what they're concerned about. But out of respect for the pharmacists, they're concerned about their viability. That's their position. If this reform doesn't go through the way the Senate amended it. So it passed the House, went to the Senate, Senate threw a couple of amendments in there, sent it back to the House. It's sitting waiting for concurrence. That simply means the House puts it on the floor and says, yep, we're good to go, and then it would go to the governor. Another option is that they invite conference. Come on down, Senate. Appoint some conferees. We'll do the same, and we'll meet this weekend and hammer this thing out, negotiate a deal. We'll provide a conference report next week, in which case the respective chambers would vote on it. And depending on how that goes, it either dies because it got voted down or it is approved by both chambers and heads to the governor. That's the process. Or they can just choose to ignore it, right, Rhino? And just, sorry. We're not going to concur, nor are we going to invite conference. Dead. That's where we're at, the dead, right? So that's what's going on. Just wanted to give you guys an update on the status in the lawmaking process here in the great state of Mississippi. That is what is happening under the dome today. That's what's happening. At the federal level, you've got oil prices, once again, moving upward. And as we have explained on the show, when the price of oil goes up, the markets retreat. And that's exactly what's happening today. By the way, your funny money, it's back down in the 60,000s again, losing some $2,000, I think, today. But the NASDAQ down 223. The Dow it has actually been down up. It's crossed the unchanged line a couple of times. This is all in response to the price of crude oil, again increasing by about $4 today, up in the $96 range. Just think about that, folks. Before the bombs were launched against Iran, it was in the high 50s, low 60s range, and now we're $96. People are feeling the pinch at the pump. The president said earlier in the week, we're going to pause for 5 days, and right now working with Iran. This is what the president reports, working with Iran, negotiating to bring an end to this conflict and reopen the strait. He knows, he understands that's critical to get the oil flowing again, to take the pressure off American pocketbooks at the gas station. On the other side, though, Rhino, the Iranians say, oh, no, we're not negotiating, right?
They also said the Ayatollah wasn't dead until they absolutely had to admit it.
That is correct. In the meantime, Israel says the head of the Iranian Navy has been killed in a strike. I don't think Iran's offered any sort of comment or official statement on that. I doubt they will. Newsflash, they lie a lot. It's amazing how lying and tyranny seem to be inextricably linked. Will you agree? It's essential. We're stepping aside for a break. Nick Simpson, Managing Director of the Electronic Payments Coalition at 11:05. We got a senator and a House member at 12:05.
TrustCare's a proud...
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
So on the program today in the afternoon hour, 12:05, it's Senator Nicole Boyd and Representative Sam Creekmore. The senator is chair of the Senate Universities and Colleges Committee and vice chair of the Senate Medicaid Committee. Sam Creekmore, the representative from Union County, chairs Public Health and Human Services Committee. I think it's Representative Missy McGee from the Pine Belt who chairs the Medicaid Committee. Speaking of Medicaid, I called it, Rhino, 2 years ago. I said, you watch. I said it on the show. Medicaid is going to have their hand out, talking about the division of Medicaid in Mississippi. And I'm not condemning them. You could just see this was coming. Need more money. Consistent with the increase in the price of health care and health insurance. You just knew it was coming. And sure enough, they have. And they've informed legislators, we need about $250, $300 million a year, already having produced a deficit for last year, which means the legislature had to act and shoot more money into the program to cover the overspending. Now, keep in mind that is an agency, its budget is very difficult to predict. It's not like, here's the money, that's all you got. It's different, works different than the other agencies because it is a match with the federal government and because there are rules promulgated by the federal government and the state has some latitude in eligibility and services provide some latitude. Right? But you don't know. You pay a third party. We do. Centene. They're a managed care organization. They manage the Medicaid program. So we pay them so much per head and per enrollee, and then they administer the program. But in the contract, if there's excesses, they come back and say, that wasn't enough. I'm describing that fairly accurately there.
Yeah, I think the easier way to look at it is there's a lot of variability in the public health.
That's exactly right.
Like, for example, in your own home, did your child get deathly ill every year? They might have got the sniffles every year or a couple times a year, but did they have a major illness every year?
Right. That's right.
There are parts of the state that will have an illness sweep through that part of the state is a lower percentage Medicaid one year.
Correct.
And the next year you'll have a part of the state that's predominantly children on Medicaid, and the illness sweeps through there. So it's a higher cost that year. I mean, that variability alone makes it a nightmare. And
so the issue, of course, as you point out, it's no different than, I know this is being an employer, your pool or your employees. And if you have some extraordinary medical costs in the event, you have a person that gets seriously ill, requires very expensive treatment, you're going to get a visit from your insurance broker the next year, and they're going to share with you your experience, what they call it, and that they're looking at the claims versus the amount of premiums they received. And if you have such an event, such a situation, they're going to go up on your premiums to cover that. I personally dealt with that. I think I told you before, I always knew that was coming when they'd call me up at the end of the year and want to take me to lunch. I'm going to take you to lunch to tell you that your premiums are going up next year. And in my experience, and it's almost impossible to avoid this if you've got any significantly sized pool, I did have a couple of employees, God rest their souls, that contracted terminal illnesses and extremely expensive to treat, as you know. One had a very serious form of melanoma, and you know that's an expensive cancer to treat. It's what the late, great Paul Gallo perished from. And if it's the same old thing like all cancers, you know, if you find out about it sometimes early enough, it's treatable. But the treatments are expensive. My employee, Rhino, was having to travel at the time to MD Anderson in Houston, largely known as the preeminent cancer treatment center in the country. And it was one of those deals where there were some brand new clinical trials drugs to treat his particular case and situation. And it was like $46,000 a treatment, as I recall. That's 20 years ago, by the way. And so, of course, you want to do everything you can to help this individual survive. What a valuable employee he was to our team as well. And that went on for a couple of years, and ultimately, sadly, he succumbed to it. But, of course, that drove premiums up. I'm really just trying to explain why Medicaid is coming to the table here. You did a good job about it. It's just variable. That was an example of like, well, last year we didn't have that. This year we got that. And that just blows your medical loss ratio out of kilt. And that's when the insurers come back and say, yeah, we got to get more money, essentially. You're a higher risk now. You've had an experience that has disturbed that ratio, essentially. I believe Medicaid currently in the state of Mississippi is a $900 billion, pardon me, I'm so used to talking about the federal government, $1 million appropriation here in the state of Mississippi. The number 2 line item in the state budget, second behind education.
If Medicaid was $900 billion in Mississippi, every hospital in the state would be a skyscraper.
That is absolutely true. That's a great point. We'd all be rolling in the dough, honestly, wouldn't we? I apologize. One thing you got to learn about.
But that's the difference in some of these numbers. Some people just don't, like, they hear millions, billions, trillions, and just flies right over their head. Like, literally, every single hospital would be about 6 stories. And some of them taller if you had that big a budget. For just Medicaid.
That's absolutely true. And so we talk federal and state figures a lot on the program. And generally speaking, when you're talking federal, it's hundreds of billions and trillions, right? Anything else doesn't apply. At the state, it's millions and billions. Is that fair to say? So The state general fund budget, $7.1 billion. We collect about $7.5 billion of revenue. Education is about the $3.3 billion line item. Medicaid, $900 million, soon to be $1 billion. In Medicaid, by the way, in the state of Mississippi, you should know that our match to go along with the federal dollars we receive is the lowest in the country. We get the highest match from the federal government because it's based on per capita income. And we have the lowest per capita income in the state, and that is how the federal government computes the federal match. Ours is about 78%. Our share is about 22%. You should know that the Medicaid program in the state of Mississippi, combined federal and state money, exceeds the size of the entire general fund budget. It's running at about $8 billion with some 700,000 enrolled in the Medicaid program in the state of Mississippi. Heck, that's a quarter of the population, and that's without expansion. If we were to expand and extend the coverage to able-bodied adults with incomes below 138% of the federal poverty level, the rolls would swell to about 1 million people. That would be a third of the state's population. We're in the Medicaid business. Let's be honest. The government is in the health insurance business. Between Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, ACA subsidies, the government's in the health insurance business. I don't think that was the vision of the founders, but that's where we are. So my fear is that Medicaid expenses are going to continue to increase in the state of Mississippi. All states, not just us, by the way. It's nothing we're doing unique that's causing the need for more funding to satisfy our match obligation with the federal government. So that's where we are, and I'm concerned that's going to put significant downward pressure on the state budget. You got that. You got PERS. You got teacher pay raises. We have corrections, which is the number 3 line item in the budget, in need of some funding for disrepair of our correctional institutions. Honestly, I think most would agree. Our custody officers, they need to see some pay raises as well. Now, that's not a significant amount of money relative to teacher pay raises because the numbers aren't the same as the number of teachers. But all this it's stirring in the pot. Hopefully, by the way, we'll get a budget this year out of the state government without necessitating a special session. We're going into a break right now, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Tim in Cleveland says, in my opinion, insurance is a scam. You have to have it, but if you ever use it, they want their money back. Well, not totally true, Tim. It's
there is an argument that could be made that it's inflationary in healthcare cost across the board. Because when you go to the doctor and you do not have health insurance,
right,
you will likely pay less than what they are charging your insurance.
There's no doubt about that. But and I've heard many people say that, why is it when I pay for these services out of pocket with cash relative to filing? Here's my response to that. if the entire system converted to that, then it would be in line with what insurance charges. The only reason they're willing
to a certain extent,
it would, well, but you'd be on the hook for the risk. And if we let, at that point, not that it would make any difference because it'd be trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, the proverbial saying, the physicians treat you. What if they said, I need a deposit, right? I need it to be half of what the services are because I'm not confident you're going to be able to pay for this because you don't have insurance. So that doesn't work either. It's a tough one. I get it. All I know is the law requires 85% of what they take in to be paid out. That is since the Affordable Care Act passed 10 years ago. And the paying out is going to those doctors. You're laughing.
I'm just thinking devil's advocate. It's like, yeah, so that means 15% inflation on the cost of health care.
Well, that's assuming.
Just mathematically.
Well, that's right, except that's assuming that insurance companies could operate without any employees, without any systems, without any resources, because that 15% covers that and leaves a little bit for profit.
Right.
So we certainly.
It was just going back to the point of it has an inflationary aspect on the price of health care because you're adding that middleman. That middleman has
right.
overhead.
But that's the price you pay for mitigating risk. You could say the same thing about your car.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I don't have any insurance, and if we didn't require that in the state of Mississippi, we have problems with that now, even though it's law, right? We have lots of people that don't have it, and they go have a wreck and kill somebody. They don't have any insurance to compensate for that, and they likely don't have any assets to compensate for that. Lock them up, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, in that instance, a lot of times, doesn't the taxpayer wind up
That's exactly what happens, just as we do for the uninsured or those that don't have sufficient insurance. He's exactly right. Actually, I'll take it a step further. It's partially the taxpayers, but it's everybody because, remember, 46 cents of every dollar is borrowed. And that debt affects not just taxpayers, it affects people that don't pay taxes. I think that's what gets missed. And you know exactly what I'm talking about here, and that's the second order thinking again. We all pay the price for that debt. And I don't mean it as in paying it back. I mean the inflation that it causes and the other negative effects, adversarial effects it has on the economy. I know this is super second order thinking. It literally could affect your job. You're shaking your head. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. And so, in fact, there was a report recently filed by Open the Books. Interesting group. And that's what they do. Literally, the name of the organization implies what they do. They expose the craziness mainly in federal fiscal matters. And they're sounding the alarm looking at the fiscal year 2025 financial report of the U.S. I just talked about this. Was it yesterday, day before, that we're effectively bankrupt, that our liabilities now dramatically exceed our assets? That equals bankruptcy is what that means. And so they saw the same thing. They just saw this report. It was released on March 19th, so we're just a few days removed from the report. And that's why I talked about it yesterday. And so they go on to explain, looking outward at Social Security, even a more dire condition for Social Security and Medicare than was thought just a year ago. The program's expected to collect $92 trillion of tax revenue over the next 75 years, but benefits will run $120. By the way, for those that think that unfunded liability wrongly is a calculation that says, hey, if you sold all the assets today, or if everybody retired today, that's usually the take that most people have on it. Would you have enough benefits to pay it? That's not how you calculate unfunded liability. It is a calculation of future revenues versus future liabilities, just as I explained. The future liability for Social Security over the next 75 years, $120 trillion. Revenues coming in to pay those benefits at $55 trillion. $92 trillion. A $55 trillion, $55 trillion applies to Medicare. Let me get my facts straight here. So $92 trillion coming in to fund Social Security benefits, $120 going out. That's a $28 trillion shortfall. Medicare, that's where there's a real problem. And I've said that before on the program, and everybody's focused on Social Security and not on Medicare. And I don't know why, because it's in worse shape, way worse shape. Whereas Social Security is expected to become technically insolvent by 2032, Social Security, it jumps around a lot. Medicare, it jumps around a lot for the reason you just explained, because the variability of the cost of care. If we invent a bunch of new care, I've said that's my view of why health care keeps going up. We keep inventing more of it. Everybody wants it. It costs money. Sometimes those new inventions will decrease future expenses associated with treating disease. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes that cost actually outweighs, but it does extend life, and it does improve the quality of life. Therefore, it's considered a worthy investment. Sure, I get that. But there is a cost. You can't ignore the economic dimension of health care. You just can't. It costs money. But get this on Medicare. This is from the report just released a few days ago. They're going to collect $55 trillion in taxes and premiums, because there is a portion of Medicare that does have a premium component. You pay. By the way, if you're retired and you're on Social Security, people out there know this. That's where it comes from. That money is deducted from your Social Security benefits, pays that. $55 trillion, but it's liabilities. It's expected to pay out $115 trillion. That's mind-boggling. So you're looking at $60 trillion unfunded liability there on Medicare. And if Medicare can't pay its bills, Rhino, it's fair to say the entire health care industry in this country crashes. If Medicare can't pay its bills, we currently have 50 million people, I think, or so, maybe a little bit less, but that number grows every day, on Medicare. 50 million, I think about 75 now on Medicaid. But the cost in Medicare to the federal government is about 50% more than Medicaid. Why? Because it's older, sick people.
Yeah, it's old people instead of kids.
Yeah. Most of the people on Medicaid are actually kids. In the state of Mississippi, 400,000 of the 705,000 currently enrolled. And that number, it shifts, but it's in that range, essentially. They're children. Children that live in low-income households. And the reason they live in low-income households, something you and I have pounded quite a bit, is because, generally speaking, we have an issue in our state where people that really don't have the means to take a child into their house. And I get it. People make enormous sacrifices, and God bless them for doing that. But in general, when you have kids going to schools that are hungry, that's a problem. Agree? Does that happen? Heck yeah, it happens. You talk to any teacher out there, they'll tell you. That's because either the household guardian of the child, that could be a parents, guardian, spending the money elsewhere, not feeding the child.
Or the money's just not there.
Money's just not there, yeah. And in which case, honestly,
I know a guy, thankfully, he doesn't have kids, but he's been struggling. He's been looking for work for literally 6 months.
What do they do? And the job market's tough right now.
He moved in with his sister.
There you go.
He's helping her around the house to earn his keep. But,
so,
I mean, eventually he's got to find a place of his own. He's got to find a job. He's got to find a way to make it.
100%.
But it's been 6 months.
So, by the way, to clarify, these figures I just shared, $92 trillion coming in on Social Security, $120 going out, $55 coming in on Medicare, $115 going out. That's over the next 75 years. That's not accounting for inflation. The assumption is those will sort of move equally. It's an assumption in this actuarial math. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
The One Body Shop.
We interrupt this program
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Why, Rhino, are these radical LGBTQ people, why do they just keep placing demands on society? Why can't they just be okay with what I would call just equality? Not equity, equality. Now, equality simply means, hey, look, you got the same opportunity everybody else does. Period. End of story. It doesn't mean special preferential treatment. It doesn't mean society will acquiesce to your stupid demands. And here's a case in point. They're pushing for all gender bathrooms in the Kansas City airport for inclusivity and to make it, quote, the most accessible airport bathrooms in the world. Can't you just go pee and do your business in the bathroom that corresponds with your biological sex? Is that such a problem to you? Why do you care where you relieve yourself? Why is that such a big deal? No, I'm a
dude in a dress,
and I got to go show my package to the females in the girls' bathroom. That's what they want. I want you to notice me. It's what you say all the time. It's attention. It is attention. It's got nothing to do with some twisted, crazy short circuit in their brain that they're experiencing. It's attention.
It's because they derive their entire self-worth from external sources.
That's sick. Well, man, I pray and I hope that the Kansas City airport folks don't cave. That would be terrible. So, as you point out, we're going to accommodate this teeny tiny sliver of the population while we inconvenience and impose what would likely result in people saying, I'm just not going to go. I'm going to wait till the next airport, or I get home, or I get to where I can be in the same bathroom with people that happen to share my biological gender.
In a sane world, the calculation for this decision would be weighing a group of crazies make life miserable for a while they show their butt in public, or I get sued because a dude in a dress diddled a kid in my bathroom.
Unbelievable. And, of course, you know what else happens? Inevitably, the
dudes in dresses
carry their phones around and shoot video all the time, right? Happens all the dang time. Just posing as, oh, yeah, I'm really... No, you're just a pervert, and you want to go in the bathroom with the females, and you want to get attention by shooting a video and publishing it. I missed something there?
No.
That's exactly what it is. You're a sicko. Unbelievable. But, oh, my gosh, just saying that drives the radical gender people crazy. What they need to go see is a psychiatrist. Or, honestly, they need a swift kick in the butt's what they need. I'm not for violence. I just want you to know that. But there comes a point when I just feel like I need to stand outside the door, and if there's a dude in a dress on the way in, I just stand in the gap. I don't know. This is crazy. This is nuts. And so they're demanding that Kansas City, the most accessible. It'd be different if the airport didn't have any bathrooms, or if they were so small they couldn't accommodate the number of the volume of people that need to relieve themselves. That's what I would call lack of accessibility. Not, you can just go to whichever one you care to based on what you think you are from a biological sex perspective. That's not accessibility. That's imposing on others, but they never think about that, do they?
Nope. Because they are the party of spoiled brats.
Unbelievable that they're so focused on that. Really is. Gee whiz. On the C Spire text line, by the way, Blake in the Delta says, we can just print more money, Gerard. Definitely aren't cutting spending. It doesn't seem that way. And by the way, Blake, that's exactly what we're doing. And that was the point I made earlier. That's what causes inflation. I tell you the word that's getting on up there, that's getting a lot of attention, that is concerning, especially with this rise in the price of oil that's likely going to drive inflation. And I don't think we're going to shake it as quick as we think. And that's the word stagflation. So what we're looking at, what stagflation is, it's a rare sort of scenario. You got high inflation, slow economic growth, and high unemployment. Normally, if you have inflation, you've got low unemployment, meaning people have money in their pocket, so demand exceeds supply. That drives inflation. And you've got slow economic growth, or strong economic growth as a result of more people working and spending money. But when you have high inflation, slow economic growth, and high unemployment, that is quite the conundrum. And I hope we're not headed there, but all indications are that we are. Nick Simpson is next.
You're listening.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays, live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now Nick Simpson, Managing Director at Electronic Payments Coalition. Hey, Nick, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good to be with you.
So the subject of credit cards is one that's gotten a lot of attention, certainly in this country. Not so long ago, the president even floated the idea of implementing a cap, an interest rate cap on credit cards. Of course, there is no such federal cap that I am familiar with now, and consumers have the option of choosing credit cards based on the terms and conditions offered by those companies they feel best suits their particular situation. That seems to have died down, but there's still some concerns, I guess, about just a lack of competition in the credit card industry. And so there's some legislation in Washington that at least portends to address that. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, the bill that you're talking about is called the Credit Card Competition Act. We like to call it the Durbin Marshall credit card mandates because, there's plenty of competition in the credit card market space right now. Your listeners and, people watching online, they get, 5, 6, 7, card offers a week in the mail, it seems. So there are about 5,000 banks in the U.S. that issue credit cards. There's tons of competition. And going back to the name, they're calling it the Credit Card Competition Act. But when was the last time a government mandate introduced competition? So it's kind of a misnomer from the start.
Yeah, that's totally true. It just feels like, and I talked to our good friend Gordon Fellows, that runs the Banking Association here in the state of Mississippi, and we have lots of offline discussions about policy coming down from the federal government and even policy attempted at the state level that looks kind of virtuous on the surface. Hey, look, great, we're gonna instill more competition in the credit card industry, and therefore you'll have more choices, and because of more competition, they'll have to sharpen the pencil. But that never happens when government inserts itself into the middle of it. Now, if it was a situation where we were violating antitrust law, where there truly was, I guess, what most people on the street would refer to as a monopoly. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And we have policy and law, statute in this country to protect consumers against that. But that doesn't feel like where we are with respect to credit cards.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It might sound like good policy, and a lot of people are talking about this like it's going to help small businesses and it's going to help consumers. Look back at the history of what happens when you have government price controls. The government did this back in 2010 on debit cards. And the big box stores at the time, the corporate retailers, told everyone they were going to lower prices for consumers. Now, the Federal Reserve came out and said what most people knew was intuitively true at the time. Prices for 98% of people went up as a result of these price controls on your debit card. Yeah. So while they talk about how these mandates on credit cards and, the technical terms on the routing and all of that are going to help consumers and small businesses, what we've seen in the past is those savings don't trickle down. And there's studies from countless universities. Most recently, the University of Miami came out and they said, if you're a small business that has less than $500 million in annual revenue, you're not going to see any savings from this. We know that consumers aren't going to see any savings because businesses, the corporate mega stores aren't going to lower their prices. But what consumers are going to see is an increase in fraud, because right now, when your credit card runs, your Visa card or your MasterCard, it runs on those dedicated networks. They know every transaction. They know, your spending habits. They know where where you're spending money. So all of a sudden, if you live, like in my hometown of Wiggins, Mississippi, if you live in Wiggins, I'm using my credit card, for 28 days out of the month in Wiggins, and all of a sudden the charge pops up in Paris, they're going to flag that for fraud. All of that is made possible because of the processing cost that is paid when you use your card and by the massive investments that Visa and MasterCard put to the networks. The other thing that's going to go away are credit card rewards. Some of those processing costs go to fund credit card rewards. Small businesses invest them back into their business, and then a lot of people use them to offset everyday costs. I think there's this misnomer that credit card rewards are really all about first class tickets to Europe or access to airport lounges and things like that. The majority of Americans that have reward cards use them for cash back. You talked about the price of gas earlier. If credit card rewards went away, it would be the equivalent, EPC study found that it would be the equivalent of a 17 cent a gallon increase in gas prices, because that's how much cash back rewards use for the average family to offset costs.
Yeah, all great points, Nick, and appreciate that. And the one point you made is really good. We sort of have short memories, but it seems like it wasn't too long ago. There are a lot of people who were fearful to utilize their credit or debit card online. And it's because of all the investment in the systems that you alluded to that are able to detect potential fraud. That probably most people listening that have a credit or debit card have been notified at some point of potential fraud on their account. There's a cost associated with that, but we're greatly protected as a result. And if they didn't make all those investments in those systems, then we wouldn't have that ability, and that would cost you because, I'm sorry, you got defrauded, and you got to go through a major hassle to undo that and reverse that. And so just the detection itself, I think, has deterred a lot of the attempts at such. And it's also, I think, boosted economic activity because we are more comfortable in that respect.
Yeah, I might be a little biased in this, but credit cards are pretty amazing inventions. The networks that have invested billions, tens of billions of dollars into them, they stop hundreds of $billions in fraud attempts every year. So for every fraud, that may get through, think of all the ones that are stopped. One of the studies going back to, the research that we have, the Texas A&M University said that fraud attempts would double if this bill passed. And going back to comparing your debit card to your credit card, right now, if you get, there's potential fraud on your credit card, it pops up, you get a text message, your card has a hold put on it, If there's a problem, you call your bank. They make it right.
You're right.
No questions asked. There's zero fraud liability on the consumer, and that doesn't exist on debit cards, largely because of the mandates that, similar to what they're trying to do with credit cards, have already been done to your debit card. So now your debit card runs on a variety of different networks. Most of them, you haven't even heard of. So those networks might not have invested as much, and because they're running on all those different networks, the banks and the credit card companies don't cover all of the fraud that might occur on a debit card network. Credit cards are by far the safest, most efficient, secure way to make a purchase, and to boot, you get rewards from it.
Yeah. And
that's just on the consumer side. If you look on the business side, think about the benefits small businesses receive. There are no bounce checks, there's no fraud, and the business isn't on the hook for people not paying. The bank that issued the card is, they're ultimately holding all the risk associated with it.
Yeah. No, all good points, and I'm not sure what this bill would accomplish exactly. I just feel like it's one of those things where every time government tries to address what is perceived to be a problem, they actually worsen it by introducing federal law and regulation into the mix, and that's kind of what this does. So I assume this is Senator Marshall from Kansas. Is that right? I didn't actually look at it. Is he the co-sponsor along with Dick Durbin? So an unusual situation where we have a Republican and a Democrat combining to sponsor legislation like this. It feels like, Nick, and to the extent you can comment on this, that I know Josh Hawley, he's been extremely critical of the credit card companies, really grilled the CEOs on the Hill not so long ago. It seems like, and we got about 30 seconds left, that Republicans are starting to sort of raise issues on the private sector, especially the credit card companies.
Yeah, this is, Josh Hawley, you mentioned, was a co-sponsor last year or last Congress. He hasn't jumped on yet this Congress. But yeah, this is a bipartisan bill that is being pushed by Senators Marshall and Durbin. But there's also a lot of bipartisan opposition out there.
Okay.
I think the bill has about 2 or 3 co-sponsors right now. So that means there are 97 members that haven't, signed up for it.
Appreciate it. Nick Simpson, Managing Director of the Electronic Payments Coalition. Appreciate you coming on, Nick. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
New year?
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We are pleased you're here with us today. We got some tickets to give away later on in the program. That's to the Doobie Brothers concert. It's coming up in October in Brandon at the at the Brandon Amphitheater. That's October 14th. And Rhino will handle that for us later on in the program. Today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear from songwriter Adam James, who has written hits for the likes of Kenny Chesney, Dierks Bentley, Zac Brown Band, and many others. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. The C Spire text line wide open. It is 601-879-4395. Don't forget to go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. Once again, today at 12:05 It is Senator Nicole Boyd and Representative Sam Creekmore in the Element Wealth studio. As the late, great Paul Gallo used to say, in the house today. Looking forward to that discussion. And so there was a question on the C Spire text line. I'm tired of all the extra charges at retail stores. They're even doing it on debit cards, too. I've heard that businesses are not allowed to charge a fee for a debit card. Google actually says it's against the law in all 50 states to charge fees for debit card use. Is that true? You and I looked this up, did some research on that. This came up a couple of months ago, I think, in our discussion with Gordon Fellows, the president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. I do think there's some retailers that maybe you're confused and don't have their systems set up correctly. What did we learn about that?
The way I remember it in that conversation, which I'll find the clip on YouTube and send it to that texter here in just a second. But from what I remember in that conversation, Gordon Fellows talked about retailers often have contracts with the different card companies.
Yep.
And those contracts will have language in them telling them what is legally allowed for them to charge. And he talked about how a lot of smaller retailers and mom-and-pop kind of stores, they don't have a lawyer on the payroll.
Right.
So they likely haven't gone through the language of those contracts with a fine-tooth comb and don't know that they're doing something wrong.
Okay.
And he suggested that they look through their contracts. But he also said that there are other instances where there may be, what was it? It was a discount or something where they'll charge a certain price for the price on the thing is for credit cards, and they'll give a discount for cash.
Right.
And that's legal.
Right.
If your go-to price is the credit card or debit card price and you give a discount for cash, you're technically charging a fee, but as long as you are notified about that beforehand, that's still legal.
Yeah.
But I'll find that. And
thank you for that explanation. So hopefully that answered the question from the person on our text line here. Do y'all have tickets for Weird Al? No, I don't think we do yet. Hadn't seen that roll through. But I bet that would be pretty good. Blake in the Delta says, and the retailer can set off the cost of accepting the card by charging a fee to the customer. Works out great for them, no doubt. So our friend Casey Waters from the Gulf Coast says, when my daughter and I were in New York at a Broadway show, we went to the bathroom during intermission. A man dressed like a woman walked in, while we were washing our hands. It was very creepy. I cannot believe they allow that. Yeah, it's crazy. Chad in Van Cleve says, let any of us show up in the women's bathroom. Not going to be pretty, y'all. I'm not going in there. Elon Musk has a plan to solve, says Tom in Lumberton, the problems you mentioned, talking about our fiscal condition and the pending doomsday is what Open the Books says about it. Has a plan to solve the problems you mentioned. We will not need jobs or money. His words. If you think it, you can have it. Elect Mr. Musk, president of the world, says Tom in Lumberton. He has made some allegations to that point, to that effect, I should say. I don't know if any of that's true. He's got some pretty wild...
not anytime soon, but down the line, it could be true in part or from a certain perspective, because look at the way prototyping and manufacturing has been done up until this point, and look at the changes that have happened in the last decade or two with the advancement in CNC machining and the rise of 3D printing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you add in the physical component of the ability to 3D print just about anything and the increasing amount of materials you can 3D print in, then you give the general public access to a manufacturing that was only available with a multi-million-dollar machine in a warehouse.
Yep.
And then you add in the electronic component of AI can not only run the thing for you. It could teach you how to program it. It can teach you how to wire it. It can teach you how to build it. If you can think it, you can have it in the future. We're not quite there yet, but we're on the path.
I think when we get to more general AI, what's called general AI, which is the next step in the pecking order from where we are today, which is a generative AI. That's what most people are familiar with when you just go to one of these AI tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. There's others as well. And then just submit a query, a prompt, and it sends back content. Could be text content, could be graphic, visual content, any types of categories of content. Well, that's what we're accustomed to today. When we move to the next wave, next level, where AI truly can replicate human intelligence, rather than just using what human intelligence has already created. That's what generative AI is doing, and that's the distinction. It can't create it. Well, the next level of AI, artificial general intelligence is what it's called, does in fact have the ability to create. Now that's where it gets kind of scary.
And that's where Jensen Huang made headlines, I think it was earlier this week.
Sure did.
Where he was on a podcast with Lex Friedman.
Yeah, like 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. And in one of the conversations they had was about the definition of AGI.
Yeah,
of
artificial general
intelligence.
Yep.
And I think Friedman threw out an example of, well, can an AI start and run $1 billion business and then shut it down?
Yeah.
And Jensen Huang said, well, if that's the definition of AGI, then we're there now.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it would be possible for AI to come up with an app that goes viral, makes $1 billion, and then goes kaput.
Totally true. Because that's just generating content.
That doesn't really mean AGI,
Agreed.
by the way most people define it.
I would argue that's just taking what's already been created by humans, right? And then training it to use that to create a company and produce an app.
Look at how crazy Flappy Bird went back in the day.
Yeah.
And the dude literally just took Mario elements, made a little bird, and made an app, and made a killing, and then Nintendo came calling with their lawyers and said, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That's true. And then when it gets even, I guess, a little more concerning is when you've got the different general AI systems that are communicating with each other, and then they start strategizing and plotting like humans would to do something malicious or nefarious. That is where there's more concerns about just the future progression of AI, not so much on the generative AI. Usually the risk there is it just makes mistakes, right? We're seeing examples of that because the humans that use the tools to generate that content that does it erroneously sometimes don't go back and check that and verify. I've had that situation. I know you have too, where I've issued a prompt and I've looked at it. The content it returns said, wait, that doesn't look right. And it turns out that it formed the content response based on dated information and was not able to discern that, wait, that's been replaced or superseded. That's a common scenario I run into all the time. And if you look underneath the cover, as you're allowed to do at all the sources it used, said, yeah, you got this one, but you didn't get this one that superseded that. It's like you needed to be more date sensitive in that process. We're stepping aside for a break, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Standing in the rain with his head hung low. Couldn't get a ticket. It was a sold-out
Welcome back, everyone. It's middays from the Element Wealth Studio. The NASDAQ now losing more ground, down 318, and that's because the president just said that the Iranians are pretty good negotiators. And he said they're terrible at fighting wars, but they're good negotiators. And that the markets picked up on that and began to sell off. Man. Sensitive are those algorithms, aren't they? Send the market into a tailspin. In the meantime, up there in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, they're sparring over the status of the Department of Homeland Security, and negotiations seem to be falling apart. The hopes for ending the shutdown seem to be just as far as as they were a month ago. Don't seem to be making any progress on that. The Senate Minority Leader, Charles Schumer, he said that the Republicans are not negotiating in good faith. He said the problem is that we've put offers on the table and they won't accept them.
Bull.
So I know. It's what they've said. Meanwhile, the Senate Majority Leader, Republican John Thune, the South Dakota senator, he said, I don't know how you get to a solution when they keep moving the goalposts. That is accurate. Schumer said Democrats' demands have been consistent. He did say senators had constructive conversations over the weekend, and he thought that the Democrats' proposals made sense. And one of those, of course, is to prohibit members of ICE from wearing masks, which puts them and their families at risk big time, because there's nutcases out there that like nothing more than to vox them, essentially. Dox, pardon me. I just read a Vox article. So dox them, which essentially reveals their address and other personal information associated with them.
So that loony leftists can go harass their wife and kids.
100%. That's exactly right. And even do stupider stuff than that. God forbid. They would consider, honestly, the lives of ICE agents expendable in many cases to advance their agenda. And that's a shame. And it's despicable, honestly. So, nothing closer at this point. The Republicans even offered a plan to, hey, what if we just not fund the deportation function of ICE? And Schumer and the Democrats said, nope, we don't want any of it. And the president got a bit upset about that, although he understands that maybe that is a compromise he could live with to get some legislation to his desk to sign to fund Department of Homeland Security, which would get TSA back to work to address the congestion and the long lines and waits in America's airports. But the Democrats clearly are more concerned about illegals than they are the American flying public. I think that is what is true.
You leave out flying and it's still accurate.
That's true. The American public overall in general, yeah, that's a shame. It truly is. But that's where we are in that respect. So while we have Washington essentially getting nothing done, what we have here in Mississippi are legislators that are dealing with the final day to concur with legislation or send it to conference for the big conference weekend, as it is referred. That's what
I'm thinking the procession back and forth today involves cannons. They just load up the bills and fire them at each other.
That's about right.
Here, have it back. Boom.
Exactly right. In my conversations with a number of them behind the scenes, they too have indicated, yeah, it's really been bizarre, is one way to put it, this particular session. It's probably easier to point to stuff that didn't make it right, that was high profile and stuff that did, starting with school choice, HB2. I point that out because that was the Speaker's top priority, and it was swiftly placed in the old garbage can by Senator Dennis DeBar down there in the state Senate. And then, of course, you got the teacher pay raise, 2 versions of that. Nothing on that yet. Still alive. And there's a Senate version, a House version. You got the public employees retirement system in need of dollars to stabilize the fund. Got a couple of versions of that. But what didn't make it was mobile sports betting. I was cautiously optimistic entering the session, but that once again did not go anywhere. Made it out of the House, didn't go anywhere in the Senate. Restoring the ballot initiative just doesn't feel like that's ever going to happen. Nothing's going to happen.
Not without cleaning house in both chambers.
I think that's right. Those, I'd say, we did have an attempt to repeal the Certificate of Need laws. We got some movement, some progress there, but not full repeal. Still have the requirement for most situations where a healthcare organization has got to go through that process, an arduous one administered by the State Department of Health, to like buy an MRI machine, for example. Add spaces to their parking lot. Literally crazy stuff like that. So some of that is being modified, and we got Representative Sam Creekmore in the Element Well studio in the next hour, and he'll clarify what did get accomplished there for us.
If he can make it.
Okay.
I think.
They're still in session?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, hopefully he is able to shake loose. We got Senator Nicole Boyd as well from that side of the Capitol coming in. Looking forward to that discussion. Maybe they have to join us a little later in the hour. That would work as well. We welcome them to again, see things from their perspective, sitting right there on the floors in the respective chambers. What else, Rhino, can we point to that I guess didn't make it that was, I think, of strong interest to voters? There's a bunch of other bills that didn't, that don't quite get the attention that these measures do, these policies do that we talked about. One thing that looks like is going to happen, we discussed yesterday, is the SHIELD Act. And that, again, is essentially a replica of the SAVE Act at the federal level, and that's just designed to ensure that only U.S. citizens vote. So some provisions in that bill that would require, upon registering to vote, one, authenticate their citizenship, require the Secretary of State to bounce that against the SAVE database in Washington to ensure they are American citizens. If not, they get informed. They have to come prove that they are. I don't think we'll see too many of those cases, honestly, but I think it's a good measure and a good guardrail, and it would also require the Secretary of State to compare all the voting data it stores in the statewide election management system against the federal SAVE database on an annual basis and flag all those who are returned from that process as doesn't look like an American citizen, and the Secretary of State would be required to provide a report of all such flagged incidents to the state legislature. So good legislation there. I think that's going through. But with respect to early voting, that's another one that came up. That didn't make it either. We do have, let's see, there was one I was looking at. Oh, the bill that would make it illegal under state law, against state law, to be in this state illegally. So that is a bill that would sort of strengthen our law enforcement's ability to assist federal law enforcement who are responsible, again, for patrolling and administering the entire immigration process. They would also be, as a result, required to participate in that and assist and even act on their own accord because it would be against the law. to be in the state illegally. So that one's going to conference, I think is the last thing I saw. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. All right, so Major League Baseball. Robot umpires make their Major League Baseball debut. How about that?
I mean, in the regular season. They've been using it during spring training games.
Yeah, they've been piloting it, if you will. So let me make sure I understand this, that you've got a live human umpire calling balls and strikes, but you've got an automated robot that could overturn it?
Yes.
And do you have to request? Does the coach?
Yes.
Okay. So kind of like instant replay, essentially.
Yeah, the batter or the catcher can initiate a replay. They do so by tapping their helmet.
Okay, I got you. Interesting. Well, I just saw the results of a poll. 72% of the fans say they support this. It means they don't like the way the umpires have been calling, I guess.
And it's not a long, drawn-out process like you have in some instant replays where you're sitting there for a commercial break and they come back and you still hadn't figured it out, so they go to another commercial break and you come back and, oh, well, we couldn't figure it out, so just stick with what we got on the field. No, this is – they challenge it, it checks it, display comes up on the broadcast, shows whether the ump was right or wrong, next pitch.
Okay. Well, and it's a bit easier to make that decision than it is when you're watching, was his foot on the line or not, or was it truly interference? Did he fumble? That's a big one, right? Was he down first? You got about 14 different angles. This is pretty straightforward. There's no obstructions to it. It's just there's the plate, there's the ball, and the tools they have today. Yeah, and all it's required, for it to be a strike, is any part of the ball over the white part of the plate, and within I'm trying to remember, from the top of the knees, I think, in Major League Baseball to the bottom of the armpits in a normal stance, I think is what the rule says. Normal stance. In other words, you can't crouch down to try to shrink that. It's what, in the umpire's judgment, would be a normal stance.
And it's led to some pretty funny changes in player bios because the automated system requires exact measurements of the players. So a lot of players that were on their trading cards the last few seasons have been 6 foot tall or taller, coming in 5'8", 5'7". One of them was 5'6", and his old was 6'1".
And that's so the machines can use the vertical space of the length, the height, actually, or
to determine what the normal stance would be for that.
For the normal stance, yeah. So I'm sure they've got some complicated technology behind the scenes that determines that based on the height of the player.
But I've yet to see a single player that wound up being taller than they thought they were.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. A whole lot of them
are shorter than they thought they were.
Oh, my gosh. Well, that's awesome. So that's going into effect, making its debut in the actual big leagues. Another thing, in the regular season.
Yeah, another thing showing up today for opening day, if you've seen the display at the San Francisco Giants game, I think it was actually yesterday when it took place, the daytime pyrotechnic fireworks. In broad daylight, they shut up fireworks out past the outfield fence in the harbor there.
Yep.
In the shape of an American flag, and it looked really cool.
Wow. How neat is that? That's awesome. It's a great place, by the way, to watch a baseball game. Unbelievable. So tonight, I'm going to be participating in a debate on education freedom. Looking forward to that. And this is a 5-on-4 5-on-4 debate, 5 for the issue and 4 opposed to it. On the support side, it's Representative Jansen Owen. You know him. He's the vice chair of the Education Committee. We've got Leah Ferretti, executive director of Mississippi Ready, Russ Latino, founder and CEO of Magnolia Tribune, yours truly, and then Lindsay Beckham, Moms for Liberty and parent. On the other side, standing in and debating in opposition of the policy, Nancy Loom, executive director of the Parents Campaign. Let's see, Darian Spann, president of the Mississippi Association of Educators, Jamie Creel, former coach, principal, and business leader, and Mario Long, former educator with the Pearl Public School District and also a parent. That's happening at 5:30 at the Pearl, Mississippi Community Center. Certainly looking forward to that tonight, as the issue's not going away. It's still being deliberated, and even though it may be dead in the legislature this year, I feel like it's going to still have some life left in it next year. That's just my opinion. May not. Maybe next year, because it's an election year, they just don't talk about it at all. Watching the markets sell off even further, Larry Fink, BlackRock CEO, warns of a global recession if oil goes to $150 a barrel. It's sitting at $95 roughly right now. Fox News, SuperTalk News is next. Hour 3 of the program. Hopefully we got Senator Boyd and Representative Creekmore in the Element Well studio.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is the afternoon portion, hour 3 of Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're winding down the old week, and the legislature is about to wind down the 2026 session. They still, however, have a critical weekend in store for them. We call it Conference Weekend. That would be to negotiate from both sides' perspective legislation that couldn't quite get across the finish line on both sides, but rather they said, let's just get in the room and hash out the differences here and try to agree on a measure that we could then support and send to the governor. And on that note, we'll welcome Senator Nicole Boyd, a senator who represents District 9, includes Lafayette and Panola counties, serves as the chair of the Senate Universities and Colleges Committee, vice chair of Senate Medicaid Committee. It's our understanding, Representative Sam Creekmore, they went out, they gavelled out, right, Rhino, and recessed, but they went back in. So it was a short little recess. So we're not sure if the representative is going to be able to join us today. We'll get him back on as soon as we can, and we certainly understand. This is one of those deals, Senator, that you probably want to be on the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
You're at that point in the session where there's kind of like a no catching up on it later on sort of deal.
Yeah, you have to be on the floor right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and even our appropriations chair and our finance chair, who have lots of bills in there, everybody's on the floor right now because you've got major pieces of legislation that are going through, and you've got to be on the floor to watch those and see what comes up, because you never know when something's going to come up, when an amendment's going to be made that would change the total complexity of a piece of legislation. Well, and you're not doing amendments at this point, but you are at this point really looking over those final segments of bills. So you have to look and see what's in those conference reports, see if there was anything put in, and you are reading everything at this point.
Yeah.
So
because it's reaching the old stage of finality.
Right.
And that's,
absolutely. So
that's why you don't, like I said, you don't have a chance to, well, that wasn't exactly what I wanted. I'll take care of it in the next one.
No.
Don't have a chance to
You
do
don't
that.
have a chance for that. So this is final.
A future session, perhaps, but that's hard.
Yeah. This is about final passage and about to be sent to the governor. So
got it.
You got to get it right.
All right, so you told me that you were tuned into us earlier, and I was going through kind of the list of things, and this is just what Rhino and I hear. On our text line, I hear it just in public in general, of stuff that didn't really get across the finish line, but you said respectfully that there are some measures that did, and we should highlight those. So, please.
Well, there's a lot of stuff still in negotiation right now,
sure.
but I'm very optimistic as to some of the things. So let's talk about education. Kind of because of the talk of school vouchers, like we missed a lot of really good pieces that were in talks with that, and most of those things are still in talks right now. We have financial literacy that we have tried to get through for a number of years, and it seems to be much closer to the finish line on that. We just signed conference reports and getting some really nailing down IHL and the community colleges and what they're teaching and what we need to do more in that arena and having them really work and identify. And we've had IHL now pass a resolution supporting financial literacy. We have the community colleges really looking at that. So those are all really strong steps because we know that we have a state that has financial issues. And so we have got to do a better job of teaching financial literacy because economic mobility and economic success really gives people that ultimate freedom.
Yeah.
And so we've got those in there. Also in kind of in K-12, we've got our adolescent literacy, which we know is incredibly important. We have done an incredible job with our third grade reading gate. That's amounted to these successes, but we've got to make sure that we continue that momentum with children. And so really we can't stop in third grade. We've got to make sure that we're getting those adolescent literacy skills through the process. So we are going to be leading the country kind of in really making sure those adolescent reading rates really continue and those good literacy skills because that's going to give them success. The other thing, too, is we need to improve some math. And we've taken the success that we've had with our third grade reading gate and we're looking at what we're going to do to build our math skills because we know that leads to much better jobs when people have a basic understanding of that. So that is still being looked at too. We've got those are all still being worked on right now. We've got teacher pay raise that we're looking at from both sides and seeing. And right now, you know, it's everybody wants to progress these ideals. It's right now, what can we afford?
Okay.
And so those numbers are being run as to what we can do for our teachers, for our assistant teachers, what we can do for community colleges, IHL, those professors, you know, in doing those things. So we're looking at all of those factors right now and really seeing what can we afford to do. So we've got all of those things that are happening with that, which I think those are huge things in helping the state move forward in all those particular issues. We still have the upskill bill, which would in conference right now.
Not familiar with that one. Upskill bill.
The upskill bill, what it does is it takes people that are 24 and above. That we know are out there or in a job that is maybe low skill, low wage, and that they can be upskilled for a minimum amount of money to get into a higher paying wage.
Okay.
And we know that our friends in Tennessee and other places across the country, this has been a highly effective program, and giving them kind of the last dollar and getting them in a retraining program and a retool program that will be worked with Accelerate, and make sure. And what we will be focused on is getting people into those high-wage jobs that we know are needed in certain sectors of the state that we don't have people to go in right now. So that's a bill that we still have that's alive right now that we're working through that process on that. We've got another aspect of that. It's called the Bridge Bill. And what it does, it would ask the Department of Education to really identify the ways we can do through CTE and for those for special needs and kind of special purpose schools, how that we can help districts come together either through working with each other, their community colleges, all the different ways so that they can get some special purpose schools to make sure that we are either advancing CTE or advancing special needs that ultimately will help lead them to a career. So we've got a lot of things happening in all those different areas.
You were a proponent, I believe it's fair to say, of modifying, reforming the funding model for our universities.
Yes.
And that got a lot of attention, a lot of debate. I think it's fair to say, a rather robust debate this year. But not much happened there, right?
Well, we passed it in the Senate. We passed what we call guardrails and funding, asking the IHL to give us a performance-based model. I saw
as opposed to what? Explain that too. How do we do it now?
So right now, what we do is basically if we get a they had a base level of funding. I believe it goes back to 2016, and basically it's a plus up. So whatever they had in 16. I believe it's 16. Whatever they had
in terms of the funding.
In terms of the funding, what a university had.
Okay.
So they may have had a tremendous amount of more students, or they may have had a lot less students.
Okay.
And so now, whatever that is, and so what happens realistically is you have a university who may receive $4,500 for a Mississippi student or any student. They may receive over $11,000.
Okay.
It has no real-time evaluation of how many students are in the university. None whatsoever.
All right, so let me make sure I understand this. Whatever it was in 16.
I think it's 16. I may have my dates wrong. But
in the past.
Right.
We just keep incrementing that in accordance with some formula that has nothing to do with the actual enrollment?
Yes, sir.
Or costs?
Yes, sir.
It's just, here's more.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds like the PERS cost of living adjustment, which has nothing to do with the cost of living.
Well, and yes, and so that's what we have been in the Senate. We've had these hearings about, we've been screaming about. So we had a bill that would have put guardrails is what I'm going to call it, on a performance-based funding formula. The Senate passed it. Yes, it was controversial, but we passed it. And so it died in the House, but we're going to continue those conversations because it is too important not to. Because right now...
That would be to convert to a performance-based funding formula as opposed to we just keep incrementing every year.
So Tennessee did it with great success.
Okay.
Alabama just passed it. They've gone to a performance-based model, and Oklahoma just passed it last week.
Okay.
So, and many states across the country are going to a performance-based model. And so we have not done the work we need to in higher ed to make sure that your tax dollars are being well spent.
Okay.
So
we got more we can talk about on the other side of the break, but think about this during the break to explain to the folks what that performance measurement would look like.
Okay.
All right. We're coming right back with Senator Nicole Boyd at the Element Wealth Studio.
Hello, I'm
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk, Mississippi. We're back with you in the Element Wealth Studio. We're taking a moment to talk to Senator Nicole Boyd. You guys recessed for today, right?
Yes.
Back tomorrow.
Yes.
And you'll probably be working through the weekend on the conference stuff.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
what happens. Yeah.
It's that time of the year.
That time of the year. And hopefully you get the business taken care of, and a budget passed, hopefully, during the regular session, and close it out next week.
Yeah. There's a lot of stress at the Capitol right now, but some of it's good stress because we're getting things done. We're moving towards the thing, and there's almost and as stressed out as we are trying to make sure we get things right, we also are it's great to see some things finally accomplished, and you're seeing kind of the end and
little sense of urgency.
Yeah, there is.
It's contrasted to the earlier part of the session.
And despite what people think in the public or whatever, we are all working together. I was just working with Chairman Creekmore and some opioid funding issues, and the House and the Senate are very much working together to kind of collaboratively to get what the taxpayers are asking us to do.
Fair enough. All right. So before we went to break, I was going to ask you to explain the performance-based funding model for the institutions of higher learning as opposed to the current model, which sounds like it's almost on autopilot.
It's called a plus-up model. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You probably hadn't heard of that in business.
It was weird.
Explain
the performance.
So a performance-based model, which you see you'll see in a lot of the metrics, and this is some of the guardrails we were asking them to really account for in a model, is you would look at 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. You would look at the number of students that are either on help grant or help or Pell that are matriculated through the process. We know that those students require a little bit more effort to get through the process and to get to that degree. A lot of times they are first-generation college students. They don't have that experience or somebody to help, so they require a little bit more.
Yeah.
We were looking also asking them to look at adult learners because that was something that very much would help our state. We have a large number of people that have a little bit of college but no degree or even certificate program, and so we want to do that. So looking at that, looking at some majors with that, and so we really wanted to you want to be outcome focused. That's what you want to be when you start looking at the states who really have improved their graduation rates and their certificate attainment rates. They are outcome focused. It's not as much about the bodies you have there, but who are you getting that degree into the finish line.
Okay.
And that's what bothers me so bad is we have got in one of our universities, they have a below 15% 4-year graduation rate. So that means I've got a student who is most likely taken out a Pell Grant loan, and there's only a 15% chance they're going to graduate within 4 years.
Yeah.
So every additional semester they're staying in, every additional time they're creating more and more loans. And then they're going to have to go out and start paying back those loans when they do that. That's not good stewardship of money, and that's not responsible as us operating systems that are failing students in that
Too
way.
many start that don't finish.
Exactly. And so we've got to do a much better job of that in the state and directing people to pathways that they can get completion rates with. And we do no one any favor by getting them to a university and then not making sure they matriculate through. And I still want the standards to be high to get them through, but I want them to have something that is real and will help them perform in the workforce.
Yeah, 100%. That's what you do it for.
And I think that's the biggest thing, too. We so long have looked at institutions. What we've got to do is look at the student. We've got to put this on keep the focus, and that's what performance-based funding does.
Yeah.
It puts it on the student and getting that student through and the students we need to get through to graduate. So other states have done that. Some of the other states even are looking at their wages, which the federal One Big Beautiful Bill has pushed now that we're going to have to do with those. The One Big Beautiful Bill has really pushed that forward, and I'm happy to see that, because basically if you have a program where somebody graduates and they would not have earned more than someone who leaves straight from high school, those programs could potentially lose their Pell Grant funding, and that will start happening in 2028. So it's going to be incumbent upon all colleges and universities and community colleges to make sure that their programs really stand the rigor of what people are going to be doing in the workforce.
Yeah, 100%. I just interviewed yesterday the individual, I think his name's Michael Busby, that, as I recall, that runs the Communiversity and the Career Technical Education, East Mississippi Community College.
Does a great job.
Yeah, fantastic job. And I just feel like, Senator, that's a great model that we should replicate across the state.
Absolutely. So
they're working hand in hand, collaborating with the private sector to make sure that the instruction, the training is geared to get those students ready to hit the ground running when they graduate.
Absolutely. So, and they're doing a great job up there working with their high schools too.
Yeah,
really getting those students in and getting them in early. So, and looking at those CT programs and how do you help that student get that job and matriculate.
Yeah.
So, we've done a lot in K-12. That's why we see this. I hate the phrase Mississippi miracle because it's not a miracle. It is a lot of hard work. But we've got to move this to our community colleges and IHL to really start seeing these performance-based models with them. And so we've had hearings, we've done those, but and we've proposed some policy. So I know that policy doesn't usually get done in 1 year, but I want to make it happen in 1 year. But so we're going to keep getting at this till we get it right.
Okay.
It's too important not to.
Okay. Well, fair enough. So it sounds like you got sort of halfway there and just need to get the other half and get it enacted.
And we did some we've got some other legislation that really will help make sure that our business community and our schools are working together, really looking at post-secondary attainment rates. And so we've kind of revamped a full process on that. So that's going to be exciting, and I think will move us in the right direction.
Okay.
So
let's talk Medicaid in the time we have remaining. You serving as the vice chair of that committee. It is our understanding that Medicaid has informed you they're going to have more money.
They have.
We knew was coming, and here we are.
And here we are. And so, and I will tell people too, that has a huge effect on our budget. Everybody's writing in, they would like this raise and that raise, but we also, that has a big, huge impact on the budget. And
ran a deficit last year.
Right. So we have, they have given us numbers on that, and we're having to. So a lot of things that people want, they would like to see funded, it's going to be taken up by that deficit by that amount of money that Medicaid is going to have.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see. I think this is something we all have to be ready for in Mississippi. I think more and more you're going to see less federal support, and we're going to have to we are such the beneficiaries of a lot of federal support on things, and I think we're all going to have to realize that those days may be
well, because we are running $2 trillion deficits, and honestly, the Medicaid program, the federal funding of that's about $620 billion. It's a prime target.
Right.
For some cuts in spending there. And right now, as you know, in the state of Mississippi, we just talked about it, 78% of our Medicaid program is covered by the federal government. Right. We get the highest federal match in the country.
We get the highest match in the country. The other thing, too, is, when I've been to these meetings, at the White House or whatever, and they talk about, people need to be looking and cutting. We never adopted Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, that's without expansion.
So we never adopted Medicaid expansion. So you see these other states really having a lot more places to cut because we never adopted Medicaid expansion. So when you start looking at those cuts in Mississippi, we really focus on the disabled, the extreme poverty,
the original
children,
intent of the program.
The original intent of the program.
Blind.
Yeah. So we're going to have to. Our cuts are going to be really hard to make with
pregnant mothers.
Yeah, pregnant mothers,
yeah.
Expecting mothers.
Yep.
Those things that we know are efficacious to be able to do those. So I think that's the other thing, too. People say, oh, well, we'll just cut. Well, it's really hard places to cut, unlike some other states that did full Medicaid expansion.
Well, and we just got a couple of seconds left, but people need to understand when you're cutting, it's not that you're cutting cash money that's going to these people. You're cutting the amount you're paying the providers to deliver those services. And they're going to deliver them regardless.
Right. And so interestingly enough, we have some of the lowest provider rates in the country. We have the lowest provider rates in the country, really, when it comes to, I call Medicaid public insurance and private insurance as well.
Commercial insurance is 50th as well.
And so then what aspect does that have on getting future providers to locate within the state?
That's why we have a shortage. They can go anywhere in the country and make more money.
Exactly. So, and being as a medical family, this is something we see every day.
Appreciate it, Senator. Senator Nicole Boyd has been our guest. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're in the final half hour of the Friday Eve show. We'll be back with you again tomorrow in the Element Wealth studio, winding down the week. And we'll probably have some news, I would think, out of the legislature tomorrow, Rhino, with the bills advancing or dying or being concurred with and moving on to the governor for signature and enactment. Meanwhile, we still got market sell-offs going on. The markets don't feel good about the progress being made towards ending this war. And in fact, there are some reports indicating that the president is struggling to sell the war. Now, there are some that would be considered really hardcore supporters of the president, so-called MAGA supporters, that are still in support of the actions the president has taken with Iran and in the Middle East. But there are some who are indicating that they are not too crazy about what's going on, and that is starting to show up in the polls now, with the majority of Americans opposing. Now, that's because you got some Republicans that don't and virtually all Democrats that don't, and it's not because of the war itself or the action itself. It's because if it's Trump, they're going to oppose it. So, unfortunately, they have introduced partisanship into a war, is what they've done. They've politicized it. Now, they would argue that the president politicized it by starting it. I don't know that I'm down for that or not. And we don't have access to much of the information that the president and his inner circle do, nor should we, in my view. I think that would compromise our strategic plans and actions. But at this point, it is becoming a concern. The average price of a gallon of gas yesterday is $3.98. That's up $1 from a month ago. Gas prices reached a record high, record as in the history of gas prices, of $5.02. That was in February 22 after Russia invaded Ukraine. And that's one that just continues to linger on. And unfortunately, with the elevated price, Russia, in selling its oil, is lining its coffers with more money to continue to pursue its war efforts in Ukraine. And so getting the price back down to where it was before this conflict started in Iran would mean less revenue into the Russian treasury, a good bit of which, as you know, goes to its war efforts, which are just stupid when you got people in your country that are starving and struggling to make ends meet. So hopefully we can get something going to get a resolution and an agreement to end this situation. At this point, just doesn't look like that that's imminent. I'll just put it that way. Doesn't mean that we may not here literally at any minute, right, Rhino, we could say the president could come out and say, boom, we got a deal. Because all that's happening behind closed doors, and we're not privy to every amount of progress or lack thereof. We just have sort of snippet updates from the president. So this just out, Schumer and the Democrats say they support voter ID, but then they block the amendment to require it. What? This just happened. Senate Democrats have shown interest in photo voter ID because the polls show that like 85% of the people in the country support that. And I would say, Rhino, that's because that's just become so common. We've talked about that we're blue in the face. All media outlets and analysts and opinionators have that support this very common sense policy. You check into a hotel, I need to see your photo ID. You want to fly on an airplane? I got to see your photo ID. Numerous other interactions and transactions in our just normal daily lives, I need to see your ID. And I remember the time when we didn't have the ability to include a photo on your driver's license, for example. Technology easily remedied that 30 years ago. But not anymore. That's ridiculous. And so the Democrats have said, yeah, we actually support that because it looks like the public does, and it's become popular. Quote, Democrats support voter ID. That's what he said on a press call. In fact, we included it, and it is included in our freedom to vote legislation several years ago. There's got to be a catch in there. I'm calling horse hockey on this. When he was asked by CNN whether he would support a clean voter ID bill, Senator Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey, said yes, and New Jersey has voter ID laws. I've got to show my driver's license. Really? In New Jersey? That's interesting. I didn't know that. But they're still blocking an amendment. That's because, you know why. Here's the deal. I guess it's just hitting me. How can I be this dumb? That's because in those states, you don't have to prove you're a citizen to get a license. Of course they embrace that idea. Right? It's the truth. Oh, you want a driver's license? There's no test. There's no verification. They just give them out. Issue them like candy, as the saying goes. That's why they support it. Because it achieves nothing based on what they want. What they don't support is you got to prove you're a citizen to register to vote. That's what they don't support. Oh, aren't they clever? They're duplicitous is what they are. They're deceptive in their approach. That's how they function. Oh, my gosh. He says that, yeah, I support that, Schumer says, voter ID, but Republicans are once again wasting time on voter suppression. Voter suppression. We're going to see how that works out here in the state of Mississippi because this SHIELD Act is about to become law. Isn't that what we found out yesterday, Rhino? When you researched it, it's been transmitted up to the governor's desk, just waiting for him to sign it, right? Isn't that the status? Or was it still waiting for the final piece of that from the House? Came out of the Senate. I thought that you had told us yesterday it was on its way to the governor. But I don't think there's going to be any holdup on that. I do believe this ultimately will become law in the state of Mississippi. And again, it pretty much mirrors the SAVE Act at the federal level.
It's still sitting in the Senate, hadn't been transmitted to the governor's desk just yet.
Okay, all right. But I feel like that's imminent. I really do. I don't see that anything's going to be standing in the way of that. Artificial intelligence, something that has caused a lot of concerns legitimately. I've equated it to a great extent to nuclear fission. There's positive uses of nuclear power. There can also be malicious, nefarious, harmful uses of it. I think that could largely be applied to artificial intelligence as well. But in New York City, they just issued policy where teachers can use AI to plan but not to assign grades. That's pretty common sense, straightforward. I've also seen some proposals that insurance companies couldn't use AI to make the final call about claims across the entire spectrum of insurance, categories of insurance. That makes sense as well. Although I do think you could train AI to essentially emulate a human in that respect. I don't know if that would require...
I have to see the language, but that would be easily circumvented.
I can see.
The AI spits out a number, somebody goes, okay, and clicks okay, and technically they had the final say.
That's true. I can see that. But that's probably something that will continue to evolve, I would say, because that could save a lot of money, honestly. And it could end up being better for consumers as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the people saying that AI is going to be the end of the world are basically the same people that said, we don't need electricity, we got candles, and the sun comes up every day.
That's true.
We don't need those horseless carriages, we got horses.
That is a good point.
We don't need the internet, we got libraries.
That's a good point. This is very similar in that respect. A newspaper at Loyola University apologizes for calling a suspected murderer an illegal immigrant. This would be Loyola University in Chicago. They grieved over the ruthless murder of an 18-year-old freshman, but looks like the campus newspaper is more focused on not offending an illegal immigrant from Venezuela, who at this point, it's an allegation, killed a student on the campus. Unbelievable. So they apologized for referring to them as an illegal immigrant. Coming right back, final segment.
Rogers Dabbs Chevrolet is Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
That would be the great Doobie Brothers bumping us into this segment. That is the perfect tune for what we're about to do now, and that's Rhino's going to give away some tickets to the Doobie Brothers.
Oh, yeah, one of the best-selling bands of all time, the Doobie Brothers, are coming to Brandon later this year on October the 14th, and you don't want to miss it. Tickets go on sale tomorrow at the Brandon Amphitheater box office and at Ticketmaster.com, but now is your chance to win a free pair of tickets to see the Doobie Brothers. All you got to do is be the 19th person to text in the words China Grove to the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. Text in the words China Grove and be the 19th person, and you'll win a free pair of tickets to see the Doobie Brothers on October the 14th at the Brandon Amphitheater.
Man, that ought to be a good one. The Doobie Brothers still popular. Their music's still widely listened to, enjoyed by a whole bunch of people, including me. And the house band plays Listen to the Music, by the way. That's one of the tunes in our set. Well done. So, we just got word that the Mississippi House of Representatives is done for the day and won't be back until tomorrow. That means we've got some disposition of bills, those that were not concurred with or not invited for conference have died on the old calendar. So that would be the number 3 dead, right, in the progression there, Rhino. So we wanted to pass on to you, thanks to J.T. Mitchell, the SuperTalk Mississippi News Director. He just informed that HB 1665, that, of course, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Reform legislation, it has died on the calendar. Wow. I'm sure we'll be hearing a whole bunch about that throughout the day and for a while. is what I'm guessing. Wouldn't you think, Rhino? Because you know the pharmacists, man, they were passionate about that and really felt that these reforms, as amended by the Senate in the original House bill, were going to be necessary, as we heard from a couple of pharmacists in the Element Wealth studio a couple of days ago who said, yeah, if this thing doesn't go through, if we don't get these reforms through, we got about 2 years of viability left, I think is what he said, for many of the independent pharmacists. Not all, but that the prediction.
Being cynical, that might have been the death knell.
Yeah.
He told them they got a chance to put it off till election year.
Okay. Interesting. You're right about that. Perhaps should have been a little more forceful on, no, we need it now in order to remain in business. Not
you cannot
27.
give a single politician on either side of the aisle an excuse to bring up something as their cause for an election year.
No doubt about it, 100%. And kick it down the road until then. I will be the savior, right? That's the game. So I'm looking at it. Died on the calendar. That's the present status. And the old disposition that you find in the headline area of the bill, this would be on the official Mississippi State Legislature's website. House Bill 1665, the official disposition, dead. And there's no Lazarus on this one either. So that's where we are. Man.
Not without unanimous consent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That ain't going to happen, as you know. So we got folks, okay, somebody is a winner there.
Just waiting to get their name.
Fantastic. Appreciate everybody weighing in and playing and listening today. Congratulations to the lucky winner of the Doobie Brothers concert, October 14th at the Brandon Amphitheater. Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they are initiating a movement to totally ban all new data centers. They just want to stop all construction and prohibit the construction of any new data centers. And what they're basically saying is that, yeah, we gotta do that until we regulate it, till we regulate artificial intelligence.
More like the Democrat Party being beholden to China. We got to put a stop to it until China gets ahead of us.
That's exactly right. So they basically say until national safeguards are implemented, that the United States should not allow the construction of any data centers. That is asinine.
Well, look at who it came from.
That is just...
Two of the stupidest people ever put on the face of this planet.
And they're serving in the United States Congress. One in the Senate, one in the House.
A bunch of idiots just like them voted with feelings instead of logic.
This would essentially cede the high ground of technical superiority in artificial intelligence and quantum computing to our most ardent enemies. Guess they don't get that, do they? But you know, he said his major concern, people are going to make money off this. We can't allow that. Idiot communist. We're out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.